Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CoStar News Hotels podcast. I am news editor Sean McCracken, here with Alan Benjamin, founder and president of BenjaminWest. Obviously, the kind of go-to experts in FF&E, OS&E, really buy. If hoteliers need something bought, Alan is the guy to go to. Alan, how are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing well, and thank you for having me back. It's been a while.
It has, and obviously, you work in a space right now that's kind of um, changing from day to day. May hopefully, from your for your perspective, the pace of change is slow down a little bit. But I guess we'll start just by asking broadly, what are kind of the big headline issues in procurement purchasing right now?
Yeah, I would say unfortunately it's instead of changing day by day, you can almost say changing hour by hour.
Yeah.
In terms of tariffs on, tariffs off, tariff refunds, different categories. And I mean, as recent as the end of last week, I think it was Thursday or Friday, some of the IEPA tariff refunds actually started to happen. It's about $166 billion pool. I'm not aware of any specific hotel clients that have received everything yet, but again, this is like 24 to 48 business hours ago. So, um, unfortunately, our phone, email, and text messaging is going off the hook with every single client asking, what they get back, how they get it back, what they do, etc. So,
Do you have
our
answers to those
process is the
questions?
process has gotten more complicated. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you have answers to those questions yet, or are you still trying to figure it out?
Um, we have had many Teams and Zooms and conference calls and in-person meetings, and the answers vary greatly by the vendor involved. So BenjaminWest acts as an agent only. We're never the importer of record,
Yeah.
and our client, the hotel owner, is never the importer of record.
Hmm.
Um, and all the refunds requests have to be filed by the importer of record. Some of our vendors were literally on it the day the website opened a little over a month ago. And some of them, some smaller specialty fabric vendors, they're literally saying it might not be worth the time to have some clients that are looking at six and some clients looking at seven digits. So it is a very real situation. And we are working with the vendors and the clients, identifying for the IEPA refunds, it's roughly a 12-month period of time. And it gets a little confusing for our clients and owners and asset managers. It's not when we ordered it. It's not when they issued the deposit check. It's when the items cleared customs. So we have to get really clear on that also. And literally sometimes a day or two matters.
So speaking of being very clear, just to lay out for our audience who may or may not be following this stuff closely, obviously we're talking about what's largely referred to as the Liberation Day tariffs. Supreme Court ruled um, a while ago now that they were unconstitutional and had to be refunded. The process of that seems to be, from all reporting, a little bit convoluted, and obviously, like you were mentioning, you were kind of stuck in the middle trying to help clients sort through getting that money back in their accounts, correct?
Yeah. And to be clear, only one form so far has been declared illegal. So there are
Hmm.
other tariffs that are still in place. And kind of to take a deep breath and a bit of a step back, everyone listening to this that owns a hotel, if they have purchased, let's say, a fabric in the last 40 or 50 years, which is probably going to cover pretty much every single person listening, they've been paying a tariff.
Yeah.
Almost every yard of imported fabric has had something on it long before 2018 Trump tariffs and current Trump administration tariffs. So there's always been a lot of tariffs involved and different duties involved. We're just talking about the specific recent adds to that are, of course, making all the headlines. Before, someone was buying, I know there's no such thing as a $10 fabric, but so I can do the math. Someone was buying a $10 fabric. It may have had a 10, 15, or 20% tariff in it. We just didn't really, I mean, we cared, but it was a component part like every other part of a fabric or every other part of a nightstand.
Yeah.
And we just agreed that that fabric was $10, that nightstand was $500, and that was the price.
Yeah. I mean, it was almost like how much time do you spend, thinking about sales tax when you go to, buy something at the store, that sort of thing,
Uh,
right? Just kind of
that's a perfect analogy. And you knew that you were going to buy something, sales tax in your city was 8%. So that $100 item, you paid $108 and left the store. It was just part of the transaction.
mhm. So, I mean, obviously, you're following this more closely than I am, but, obviously, I mean, the Supreme Court ruling, there was seemed to be some hope from the business community that this would kind of settle down, the kind of tariff trade approach that we've seen, but there's been, albeit smaller, different waves of tariffs that have emerged since then, correct? And you'll once again have to be keeping up to date on what and where and how, and also questioning whether those will hold up to court scrutiny, correct?
Correct. And, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but you even get into things like how certain pieces of furniture were classified. If it's an upholstered headboard, is that the category of wood bedroom furniture? Is that the category of upholstery? What type of fabric, material, leather, vinyl was used on it? And then what's the country origin of that material versus the headboard? So, without boring everybody listening, there's a lot more to it than the headline and, the normal news sources, and it does require. I think that the biggest thing to ask for owners right now is a little bit of patience
Yeah.
as you go through this. And then the other thing I'm telling every owner, and I was at ULI 10 days ago in Nashville, is that if the auto industry or the steel industry makes a headline in the financial news media about getting refunds back, I think the key thing will be when the interior furnishings industry, which is 80-90% residential, we're a small part of it. Once they start getting specific refunds back in upholstered furniture and wood bedroom furniture and decorative plug-in lighting, then we'll know that, hey, we should be at the same time, if not immediately next.
And there's no formal process, correct, for like once the importer of record gets that money refunded, how they have to handle handing that off to the purchasers, correct?
That's a really interesting question, and that has come up a lot. So there's a formal process for them to apply. The government opened up a website. I believe it crashed the first day since so many people were on it, but it is pretty functional now. And there is a lot of question of technically and legally, does the vendor have to refund that? I think
Yeah.
there's a consumer lawsuit happening now for a purchase under $100 at one of the major retailers, saying that, hey, they paid a tariff on an $80 item, it's $8 or whatever it is, and they want that refund. I do have some vendors that are saying they will pass on 100% of it, with no administrative cost to collect it. Other vendors are saying that they're going to have a small administrative cost. And then you get into a really, again, kind of slippery slope and into the devil's in the details, in terms of the tariff was paid on the first cost, not on the PO price. And then some vendors ate part of the tariff to be competitive when we're doing our job as a procurement agent. They really wanted that order. So if they ate 20% of the tariff, they're not going to refund 100% of the tariff. So it
Yeah.
is a complex process to say the least. And it is one that we are working on behalf of our clients every day.
It just dawned on me to ask this, so I apologize if I didn't give you enough time to ponder this specific question, but I don't know how much times we've spent talking about kind of the stated goal of tariffs, which is always, to influence who is buying what from where, right?
Hmm.
And obviously, as somebody who works with the people who are doing, you know, picking out what they want, like doing the ultimate, like, buying this piece of furniture to put in their hotel. Have you
Hmm.
seen a demonstrable change in buying behavior in the way that it seems like these tariffs are intended to induce?
Um, I've seen some, and it's a interesting conundrum, probably different than most of your listeners would think. The higher end the hotel, 4 or 5 star, completely bespoke resort, etc., the more difficult it is to buy domestic. And I think a lot of people would probably think it's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Um, the more mid market, select service, limited service, extended stay, it's a little easier to buy domestic. And obviously, when the first tariffs hit in 2018 and the subsequent current Liberation Day tariffs, everyone's like, "Hey, Alan, we want to buy 100% of our hotel domestically. I don't care if I pay a little bit more." And I'm like, "Well, unfortunately, that's impossible." And I always use a car analogy. You can't buy a Corvette or an F-150, as American as you can get. The content of that car is not 100% American because we're in a global supply. But it has changed a little bit, but it's not a situation where you can flip a switch and move massive manufacturing industries from one country to another overnight. But I do think is more focus and investment in North America and specifically USA sources.
And I guess, I mean, defenders of tariff policy would likely say that that's kind of the end goal, right? That you can't make this change overnight, and you're trying to induce long-term behavior in such a way that manufacturing moves stateside, if not just,
Yeah,
North
it's
America at
very
least.
Yeah, very category specific. I mean, one thing to keep in mind is America is, I think, not just competitive, but world leaders in things such as vinyl wall covering, solution dyed nylon carpet that's typically in guest rooms, and then the content of a hotel. You have window treatment, fabrication. Who's ever making that is domestic. So the entire contents of a hotel, you can't buy it only from the USA, but it also doesn't come 100% from outside of the USA. So it's very much similar to probably the clothing industry, the automotive industry, other industries where it is a very much a global supply chain, and certain countries have either, structural labor, farming, whatever competitive advantages to make certain types of commodities. Where's cotton grown? Where's these types of things made, or where's the specialty labor?
Mhm. So, to switch gears before we spend too much time just talking about tariffs, because I don't want this to just be the tariff podcast.
Right.
Um, you did kind of an interesting analysis for us, recently, taking a look at kind of post-pandemic, CapEx costs and
Mhm.
the analysis into, purchasing versus building, which, those numbers have gotten kind of crazy out of check compared to, the long-term industry norms. Um, Before I go too deep into doing a bad job describing your analysis, can you kind of explain to our listeners kind of what the takeaway was?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is when you go back and look at, some of the prior cycles, tax reform of '86, Gulf War '91, terror attack '01, Great Recession '07, '08. There was opportunities for our people, owners in our industry, to buy hotels very inexpensively, far below replacement cost. And if you were 60, 65 cents on the dollar, it pretty much didn't matter what the hotel was, you were going to be fine. And now we're in a spot. Let's go back to that Tax Reform Act of '86. So that's when a lot of hotels, money was syndicated together, and they were built not necessarily to make money. So you had a huge building boom in the mid '80s. Those buildings themselves, the physical real estate, is now 40 years old, literally to the year, if it was built and opened in '86. And we're kind of past the life of the building on a lot of those structures. And I think, we're in a situation where I think it was Mike Levin quoted it 30 or 40 years ago, where he said we're not overbuilt, we're under demolished.
Yeah.
We're kind of in that cycle again where, unlike the 60, 65 cents on the dollar, you can't go wrong. There's probably, I don't know, to pick a number, 20% of the existing buildings that don't make sense at 20 or 25 cents on the dollar. And it's not my area of interior furnishings. I'm kind of the drywall in. That doesn't change radically, but literally the building is used up. It's the Honda Civic with 300,000 miles on it, owned by 5 high school kids in the last 10 years. And it's like, it's not really worth rebuilding the engine and the transmission and painting and fixing everything else. And there's unfortunately a lot of hotels like that out there right now. Um, that creates opportunity though for people. One person's misery is the other person's opportunity. So, it's a key thing to figure out what's the right play for those types of assets.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, as you pointed out, within this, that with so much, of the available, CapEx dollars going to, back end systems and, the vital backbones of these buildings, if owners choose to invest in them and then refresh them, like a lot of the FF&E and stuff that might be more noticeable to the guests when you're trying to refresh like that goes by the wayside, right? So I wonder how much that plays into kind of this post-pandemic guest perception that like the industry feels a bit dated and undercared for.
Yeah, really well said, and you're exactly right. I mean, the guests can walk in and go, "Oh my god, this place has been renovated," and the owner just spent literally 100,000 a key, but none of it was guest facing. It was window
Yeah.
sills and roof and elevators and electrical and plumbing, things that are really important, kitchen equipment, laundry equipment, all that stuff. And then there is not that much left for our area of kind of front of the house FF&E. But obviously, you know, putting new carpet and new furniture in doesn't really matter if the roof is leaking. That's a
Mm,
problem.
yeah.
So it is interesting. And, the brands were pretty loose on brand standard compliance right after COVID, and people were in a survival mode. But it's hard to imagine. COVID was 6 years ago now, and brand standards are definitely being enforced again. And when you have still the huge proliferation of new brand introductions, the FF&E has to stay current, or that brand just kind of de-evolves further and further down the chain scale.
I mean, you say it was 6 years ago. It's what, like 4 years since we've returned to some sense of
Yeah,
air
well
quote
said. Yeah,
normalcy,
I
right?
always think of March of. In fact, I remember it literally was a Friday the 13th, March of 2020, when I probably at this point foolishly, likely no one got COVID from it, pulled 50 people in the conference room and said, "Hey, we're just going to be off for 2 weeks." If you remember, it was going to be 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
we'd be back to normal.
Yeah, I feel like going back and thinking of that first kind of week of, COVID closures is like, this current generation's version of, like, "Where were you when a man landed on the moon?" type of thing. But
Well
I
said.
I also remember I'd planned to take that week off because I was going home, and I went to my previous workplace, like, while I was visiting my hometown, and they wouldn't let me in the building, like, and I was like, "Why are you guys being so weird about this? I just came to say hi to few people," and they're like, "No, we literally just shut down and everybody's going home. No one's allowed in the building." I was like, "What?" And then, I didn't go into the office for a year and a half.
Yeah, and obviously at that time, I mean, it kind of goes back, tying that back into the capex situation. If the building, let's say, was 35 years old at the peak time of COVID, and the chillers and boilers needed proper maintenance, there was none of that done. So now you
Yeah,
kind of went from you were changing your oil every 5,000 miles, you went to 50, you went to 100. Oh, because, on a $100,000 piece of equipment, $5,000 piece wasn't replaced. Now you have to replace the whole thing. And I think the COVID lack of funds, I mean, no hotel had a pro forma saying we're going to have 0% occupancy for 6, 9, 12 months, because there was literally no money for any form of capex, and really not even much repair and maintenance. It was just pure survival mode. The physical plant got in much worse shape. And one thing to keep in mind, hail and sun and rain and snow, the physical envelope of the building, the weather did not care if you were 0% or 100% occupied. And that really accelerated now the 300,000-mile Civic has 400,000 miles on it in
yeah.
terms of its use.
Let me just applaud you real quick on maybe the most expert segue I've heard from pointless banter to relevant insights on this in the
Thanks.
history of this podcast at last. So well done. Um, I don't want to just make this like negative conversation. Obviously, we've talked about kind of sorting through a lot of the challenges the
Yeah.
industry faces right now. But do you see kind of any kind of untapped opportunity for hoteliers right now? Is there something out there in the current landscape that people should be taking more advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, one of the good things is if they can find the right capital and have the right team to execute, this is probably right now one of the best buying opportunities, similar to, January, right after September 11th. So it'd be like, January 2002, 20 plus years ago. It can get the right asset, whether it's 30 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar. I mean, it's all going to depend on location and demand generators and, condition asset. There is great opportunity because a lot of funds are way long in the tooth. They should have sold, they should have recycled. And again, it kind of goes back to that two sides of the coin, misery versus opportunity. I do feel, and I've been doing this for forever, 40 plus years, we're kind of in that first year of the next cycle. And I think people are going to look back on now, probably the next 12 to 18 months ago, I should have bought the X. I could have bought it for this and converted it to that and make it work. And the other thing I would say, despite, obviously fuel cost is a huge issue, diesel and trucking and shipping, and tariffs are in the news every single day. Our industry, the FF&E for hotel industry, is working shockingly well, given the potential headwinds. I mean, we're probably, we buy about $1.5 million a day, over 400 million a year, 300 plus projects, all different segments, all different types of projects. 98, 99% of it is on time, on budget, arrived fine, didn't come in broken. It's amazing when you have thousands of different vendors, component parts from all over. The system is working. I mean, if you had an airline that was 98% on time landings, that would be the airline that would be leading the industry. So costs are up, and that, especially the labor cost. As I put in the Costa article you were mentioning, I mean, from pre-COVID, the labor's probably up double what the FF&E product cost is. So it's something, going back to your opportunity thing, you want to find the repositioning, rebranding, major CapEx where it's not necessarily massive labor,
Yeah.
making 3 rooms of 2 or 2 rooms or 3, or tons of tub to shower conversions and tons of electrical and plumbing. If it's more of a FF&E paint carpet type of renovation and the physical building is still in good shape, that's where I think the golden opportunity is.
And obviously, the brands have never been more eager to kind of facilitate that than they are now. The menu of conversion options for a hotel owner is pretty massive.
That's probably a podcast for a whole nother thing where, they're motivated by net unit growth and the owner's motivated by bottom line and making money and return on investment. But yes, every major brand has a sub brand that allows you to trade up or down 1 or 2 levels and still stay within that brand family. And I think, again, it kind of takes a really creative owner, asset manager to look at what they have and maybe see something that other people aren't seeing. And I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
then work with the right brand. And of course, as you guys know, I mean, you go 3 miles away, you could have 2 of the same brand, same size hotel. One's in bankruptcy and one's doing record returns. So
Yeah.
you really it's still a street corner by street corner business where you've got to say, okay, this hotel in this location with this competitive set going after this market, if I spent this dollars, these dollars on this CapEx and I got this thing done now, here's my runway and what that investment looks like. That takes a lot more vision. I think that's probably the challenging part, is this cycle is a little different where it's not just, buy this, spend X per key, keep the story going. It's kind of a change of story and change of direction for a lot of these assets.
Well, Alan, this has been a really wonderful conversation. I hope it's been as instructive and illustrative to our audience as it was to me. Thanks for taking the time.
At it, great to catch up and look forward to seeing you again soon.
I'm Terence Baker, News Editor, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and I'm the host of The Upgrade, a CoStar News Hotels podcast for the EMEA region. In it, I discuss with special guests the pressures, challenges, joys and exhilaration that comes with managing, owning and developing hotels in our glorious multifaceted industry. Discovering the EMEA region from the scenic northern shores of Norway to a heights of Table Mountain in South Africa, and most likely some chat about birdwatching, distance running, and the English Premiership. Join us wherever you find your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on other platforms.
This episode of the CoStar News Hotels podcast was recorded on May 18th, 2026, and edited by me, Sean McCracken. Visit costar.com/hotel news for more coverage and find all of our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen.